Hey, David T.S. Wood here, and welcome to my Extra Mile. And our comment winner today is Susan S. Hey, Susan. And Susan just says, thank you, thank you, thank you. This really had a massive impact on me and my mindset and my behaviors. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan. Really appreciate you. Today's show, listen, it's a solo show. I think this is really going to be important. I'm really talking about money, but talking about, how much you're earning currently, how much you've been earning, and what you can start doing immediately to start changing how much money you can make, how much money you get paid, and what you're willing to trade your time for. And so to really have a sort of a deep dive into what I did personally to move from being broke to broke, I don't like that word, but having no money to having a lot of money, is to give you a couple of things to focus on that you can do immediately right now, and a challenge for you to challenge how you're showing up currently, so that you can start to become the kind of person that can make a whole lot more money than you are currently. So with that being said, enjoy the show. Don't forget delete and push those buttons, but the notification is a really good button to push so you know when a new show comes, and I'll definitely see you on the other side. Hey, David T.S. Wood here, and welcome to my Extra Mile. Yep, solo show, driving again, going down from the ski hill. I started to think about something, and I've taught this a lot on stage, so if you're one of my regular students, I would say that, if your income is not exceeding your expectations, then maybe listen again, even if you've heard me talk about this once before, or even twice before, because it's such an important thing. And I want you to understand that when I say you have a number, all right, everyone has one, but we don't choose them consciously most times. There are a few people that do. Most people don't choose their number consciously. Now, what's the number I'm talking about? The number I'm talking about is the number that you're willing to trade your time for. So I'll give you an example. If you're a school teacher, right? When you think about becoming a school teacher, it's very rare you sit down with your teacher at school or with anybody and discuss what the choice is going to bring you financially. In other words, a school teacher in this country, I live in Canada, is probably about between $40,000 and $60,000 a year. If I'm a little bit out, don't worry, I'm not a school teacher. So if you're a school teacher and I'm slightly wrong, I know a principal maybe gets up to 80. But it's not like when you're starting out, you're thinking, all right, I'm choosing this number for my career. So for the next 40 years, now I understand that careers have changed and the 40-40 plan has really changed. In my father's day, people, got a job, worked hard, got a pension. That ain't the case. But still, what I've discovered, which I find really interesting, is that that number will chase you from profession to profession. And they've done, there was a study done, I think it was the New York Times, where they ran an ad in the New York Times, 2 ads, identical ads, same size, same font, same everything. And that, hello back, welcome back. That basically, I know I've talked about this a number of times on the show, that people who were looking for the job, there was one that was like 100,000 a year, one was 40, that the majority of people went for the 40,000, because if you're used to making 40, 45, 50, $60,000 a year, it's very, very rare your brain is a part of the brain called the RAS, the reticular activating system. It's very rare that brain is going to allow you to even notice a job, your job in your field that's offering $100,000. It's just going to discount it because you're pre-programmed for this number, the number you're willing to trade time for. Now, some of you have different issues around money. I mean, if we look at the maybe 4 different types of money personalities, like the spender, the avoider, the money monk, and the hoarder. Now, the money monk, and I have friends and family members who feel this way, that somehow if you have money, they may not articulate it consciously, but their results and their behavior and how they approach money, they're always broke, but somehow they link wealth and greed, or wealth and power, and they want to, because they have a sort of a money monk philosophy, somehow they think of money as scuzzy, right? So I want you to sort of think about this for a moment, about the number that you've chosen, consciously or non-consciously, and just ask yourself the question, with the current number that you have in your world, what is that, if you were to describe your current way of living, your lifestyle, your choices, so how do you describe them? And again, I've done this a lot, and a lot of people, because what we do is we're creatures of living to our means. So, people make 100 grand, they live into 100 grand. They make 50 grand, they live into 50 grand. Sadly, most people are 73,000 in this country anyway, have $73,000 worth of credit card debt. Is that insanity? But that's just the way it is. So we actually live beyond our means, which is even worse, right? Spending more than we have. And, really, the credit card companies and, even car companies, it pisses me off that, there's a 72-month plan now. It's just trickery. It gets you, it's only $140 over 7 years. And that interest payment is just colossal, and it's just crazy. It's just a crazy thing. But credit card companies, they'll give somebody who has bad debt more debt, because that's what they want. That's how they make their money. For me, who pays off my credit card every month, what are they making from me, right? Apart from the fee, or the annual fee, and that's quite small. So going back to this, the money personality type of thing, if we go talk about the money monk, they feel money scuzzy. The spender is much more prone to feeling good, call it retail therapy, they have expensive cars and expensive watches, and they love credit, and they spend, and they're in debt. And so the hoarder is interesting, because you think, these guys have got it sorted out, but the hoarder is a negative term, right? Because people who stash money away, and it's painful to spend it. So in other words, they have money, but to actually use that money and have release that energy is very, very hard for them, and they're always looking for a deal. So they're not very happy people, typically hoarders, right? And the avoiders, which is really where my category, and I know I've talked about this before, but I don't want to really spend too much time here, but it's good to repeat things, because they, once you sort of figure these things out, and where I want to get to in this show is not just the premise, which the premise is that you all have a number, and you live into and subconsciously accept your path, your profession, and by the way, if you're in sales or something, you may be accepting the feast and famine, or if you're an entrepreneur, you may be accepting that, you pay yourself last, and that you actually don't take a wage at all, right? So there's all these different things that we accept. But when do we challenge? When do we look? And the exercise I do on stage, and I think I've spoken about it on the show as well, is if you drew a stick person, and you put a cloud above their head, like a think cloud above their head, and write your number. So just take your average income for the last 10 years and write it in there, right? And then you ask the question, okay? Or you get your number. So if you're a school teacher, if you're an electrician, if you're this, if you're an entrepreneur, it's interesting, because you may have had a bumper year last year, but typically what happens is, and you know what I'm talking about is, you have a bumper year, so you go and spend it on a new vehicle for the business or whatever, and you're sort of always running close to broke, or you have a bumper year this year and 2 years that are really down. That's kind of, and if you're in the building industry, it's that sort of feast and famine, peaks and valleys, right? So now we sort of establish that we have a number and just look at that, and then we ask ourselves to give ourselves a word to describe how life is. And what I hear a lot of is struggle, hard, suffocating, limiting. I mean, these are the words I hear from my students when I ask them this question. And then all I ask them to do is just add a zero. So if you're making 60, if you were to make $600,000 a year. Now, that may be a massive leap for a lot of you. I understand that. But it still begs the question, that there's a lot of people out there who make $600,000 a year, or if you make $30,000, $300,000. What I found to be interesting is it takes the same energy. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, and it takes the same energy to make $300,000 as it does 30. And I would argue that some people who are in the lowest income brackets work harder in some ways, right? They have shittier jobs. They're expected to work longer hours, minimum wage. Often they have 2 jobs to make ends meet, or 3. You may be listening, you may even have 4 jobs, right? So now we've got this picture, and we understand that, all right, now if I add a 0, what's life going to be like? Obviously, massive choice. Now, if you don't live into the 600, because if you're earning 600 and you live into it, you're still 1 paycheck away or 3 paychecks away from being broke. Now, you may have a nicer house and a nicer car, but again, I see a lot of people who make a lot of money who are just very, very close to being broke, right? Because they spend it all. Now, so my question, or the thrust of this show, is not about the whole financial thing, because I've talked about that before. What it really is what do you do? How do you add a 0? And if it wasn't a 0, how could you add an extra 10,000 or an extra 20,000 to your current number? What could you do without just, having to work 24 hours a day or double the job? And here's my premise. My premise is that, first of all, we have to become aware that you have this number, and you have typically a limiting belief that your time is worth 60,000. My question to myself, which I went back, and I was making $4 an hour as a dishwasher, and because I'd been backpacking for so long, my number was very, very tiny. I lived on thin air, really. And I asked myself the question, who do I have to become to add a 0? And I remember, and I made over $1 million in a year, and I mean, I've had some very, 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 very great years, and I've been able to create financial freedom for myself. But I really had to look at the 0 and ask myself a better set of questions. Is, if I kept thinking the way I was thinking, and if I kept doing what I was doing, and if I kept hanging around with the same people I was hanging around with, because most of the people you hang around with have similar income brackets to you, it's just the way it is, right? Then I'd keep getting that same number. And it's not like I have a lot of friends who don't make a lot of money. I have some friends that are broke. It's not like I can't be friends with them, but I don't want their influence. It's not they have nothing to offer me in the financial realm whatsoever. 0. In the financial realm, now they may be very, very happy. I don't know very, very many broke people in the Western world that are exceedingly happy because they have to go to work, and that's a big part of their day. And you think we spend 26 years sleeping? 26 years of our life is spent asleep. 26 years if we left to 100. Is that crazy? The average person would spend 26 years in bed. So that really, I try not to do that too much. Sleeping is very, very optional in my world. But so then I really looked at the mirror, and I asked myself a better question. Who do I have to become? What would I have to start thinking? What would I have to start believing? And when I first started this exercise, I didn't have much money. I was, broke was not the right word, but I had no money, if that makes sense. Some people, when I use the word broke, there's an energy to broke that I don't like. I wasn't broken and I wasn't accepting. I was just broke because I backpacked for 10 and a half years, and starting in a new country with nothing. so I had to figure it out, and I went down some weird paths and strange paths. I did some things probably I'm not as proud of if I were to look back, but I was growing and learning and deciding. But once I became aware of my number, and I became aware that I could have impact on that, then I started to take responsibility for it. And I asked myself a question that was, what would somebody who was making $600,000 a year, how would they be thinking? How would they walk? How would they talk? What kind of posture would they have? What would their conversations be about? And I started studying successful people. And I noticed that successful people had a very, very different philosophy than I did. And they had a very, very different mindset. Now, what was interesting as well, if you look at an Elon Musk or a Richard Branson or, some of the richest men in the world, I found out that they left school, they leave as young as I did probably, but there wasn't the school education that gave them the edge because they didn't have it. But what they all had in common was a philosophy of contribution. I think was really important, of taking risks, of passion. Really, passion was a big one for me. Was being deeply passionate and really wanting to grow. Being around people who had better conversations, who were wealthier, had different effects on me as a human being. So I started to really look at how I was showing up and how I was thinking and what I was talking about and what I was willing to accept. And then I started to look at how do I grow myself. And that saying I use all the time, my wealth can only grow to the extent I grow myself, is true. Now, there are people I've had as students that make more money than I do today because they've continued to grow and they, their focus is on that and they've got really great skills in that area. I do have maybe a different thing, is that I have no goal to be a billionaire. I mean, I'm already very wealthy, but I didn't have a goal to be, uber rich, and it wasn't about, being famous or any of those things. Didn't interest me. I really wanted to live life, and I wanted to be in the moment. So I wanted to be able to make a lot of money and have a great life, not sort of trade it and wait till I was 65 or 70 to be able to go and enjoy it. I wanted to enjoy it as I went. So, so I'm not in the, wait, I'm here. Hello, I'm back. Don't go. Oh, hello. So I was really clear on my life by design piece, was that, I wasn't going to be, the 18-hour day like Elon. I wasn't that. It was more like a Branson, but I didn't want to be in an office in a typical way. So I kind of not only wanted to become the person that could add the zero, I also wanted to be aware of the design of my life so that I knew that what I was doing I wasn't sort of trading myself for this number. I was amplifying what I wanted: the spirit, the freedom, the choice, the vibrancy, the transparency, the passion, the je ne sais quoi, right? Without giving that up. Anyway, so basically what my challenge to you is this, is first of all is do the exercise and look at what your number is. Then look at how life is. Just give it a descriptor. Describe it to yourself. Is it suffocating? Is it limiting? I mean, is it joyful? Is it abundant? Is it freedom? Or is it not, right? Then look at, adding another number. Now, you could add the zero. I like adding the zero because it's simple. But there again, I train a lot of people in a profession, which is why I think a side hustle, like network marketing, for example, where you can have a leveraged income. That way, you really can add zeros. You can't add zeros typically if you're not an entrepreneur. But what you can do is, if you're not willing to become an entrepreneur or not willing to pursue a side hustle, if you're not willing to grow in a new arena, then what you can do is at least be the very best in the arena you're in. And this is that part that I really got, is when I was a dishwasher, or when I was a waiter, or when I cleaned rooms, or recently, I mean, I'm talking about just this last few weeks, painting and decorating my son's new house. I used to be a painter and decorator, but I could feel what I was like. And it wasn't like it in the beginning. Jesus, I'll tell you a whole story. I should do a whole show on that, on how I learned this principle. It's a very interesting story, actually. One of you remind me. Anyway, and so but just becoming the best. And how I became the best was always about modeling, is watching someone do something who's really good and just copying and then doing a little bit more. So that was my particular way of becoming good at things. Now, what I realized is my attitude I could be good at all the time. So when I started going into places, I had a great attitude. And that is very, very important because, creating wealth, changing the number, having more, comes down to how we treat ourselves internally, how we treat the world around us, how we show up, what do we give? And I always think, a lot of people are looking for, give me heat, then I'll give you wood, if they want a fire. I may lose you again here. I'm going around a very steep corner. And I'm always about, I was always feeling is I'm going to give more than anyone ever expects. I'm going to overdo the giving part. Yeah, but not because I want anything, just because it's a great way to live. It's a more beautiful way to live. It's amazing when and contributing or giving or sharing or helping or being kind, all those things are like, wow, easy to do, but they sort of up level and again, this is going to sound a bit woo-woo, the vibration, woo, right? Up level the vibration a little bit, and you start to attract more. So, you'd expect to get a better promotion. You'd expect to have more of an opportunity. People who maybe not in your particular place of work, but maybe somebody else sees you and they love your attitude so much that they try and hire you into something different. Or an entrepreneur sees you and says, I just love your energy. You're always so positive. I wonder if. So for me, that was one of the secrets, was I became somebody that I wasn't a victim of what was happening. I wasn't a victim of how I felt in the morning. Oh, do I feel great? Is my body hurting? Am I hungover? I was just willing to say, if I'm going to be out in public, I'm going to be a positive, vibrant, kind, aware, generous, giving kind of human being. So that was really the magic sauce of adding the zero. The magic sauce was the things I could control. Now, I couldn't control what people were willing to pay me. But then the other part was, as I started to want to grow more, I started to have ideas I'd never had before. And the ideas I'd never had before, right? Suddenly I started to think about things that would allow me to make more money. And because of that opened up new doors because of that. So this growth thing that was happening on the side was actually allowing me to kind of open my mind to things that I'd never ever thought about. So that was interesting, right? And so, so this is kind of where I'm going to sort of leave this show, is for you to start to think about, if you took your number currently and added a zero, how are you going to walk, talk? What are you going to be interested in? What kind of books are you going to read? What kind of people you're going to hang out with? How would you sound? And why not embrace that and start to, it's getting dark, and start to give off that energy and notice what happens. And it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, sometimes it does. But when you don't give a shit, like I never cared. I wasn't trying to get. It was just a better way to live. It was just more beautiful. Every day became more fun because I lived life on my own terms, by my own way of being, as it were, right? So that's where I'm going to leave it. That's your challenge. And then we can get into this more. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment. Don't forget to join me on Instagram and Facebook at David T, as in Tango, S as in Sierra, David T.S. Wood. And please, if you can push the notification button, it will let you know when the shows drop and at least come over. If you don't like YouTube, just let it play in the back. I do it all the time. I'll put a YouTube on. I don't have to watch it. I can walk around with it playing, right, at the same time, like a podcast. So you can do that too. With that being said, again, I really want you to challenge your number, and I want you to live into your new number, and I want you to then, we can talk about if you want to take a different path and you want to add the zero, then you're going to maybe, for a lot of you, it's looking into a new vehicle, because you have to have the right vehicle for that as well. But you certainly have to be the right person. So you don't have to be rich to grow yourself, right? But you have to grow yourself in order to be rich. Okay. Anyway, thank you for listening in. I'm going to get down off the mountain now. As you can see, I'm almost at the bottom of the mountain, and I will definitely see you on the other side.